Greetings, I'm Tiger Feather of Wind Clan. I eventually would like to commission an amazing artist for an icon avatar sort of thing for these videos, but until then, you're just gonna have to look at this, which is a screen from the official, mind you, official Warriors site, the Mini Maker. I have been working on an alternate universe or fan fiction sort of thing for a while now in terms of Warriors, and I can't get enough done to actually release it as like media exactly, but I want to at least share my ideas so if others do like the concept, they can run with it if they so choose. So this fantasy fiction concept begins at way before the book series called The Dawn of the Clans, or the arc rather, and we have Pangea, and for those who don't know, Pangea being when all the continents were just one giant continent, historically speaking, on our planet. This single continent will eventually, as time passes, become many clans all over the planet in the modern day, which Warriors takes place. There are the three major clans: Lion Clan, which would descend to Thunder, you could say, Tiger Clan, which would be River Clan, and Leopard Clan, which would eventually inspire, I suppose you could say, Shadow Clan. There are also two minor clans as well. These would be Cheetah Clan, which would go into Wind Clan, and Cougar Clan, which would go into Sky Clan. And there would be this idea as well where the major three clans would be more centered around the sun, whereas the two minor clans would have more to do with the moon, because I believe originally in Warriors there was supposed to be a sort of rule where like moon in particular wasn't supposed to be used as a name out of like reverence or something, and that was one of the many things that kind of just got forgotten over the years. I began reading the Warriors series back in 2006, and I have been involved in the fandom since 2007 probably, if not even before that. I know for myself personally, and I've seen, witnessed, heard, whatever from many others, the ever too common criticism that Star Clan is just way out of touch and isn't the same Star Clan we were originally introduced to, and that it just does not make sense anymore. Hear me out. I think the issue with the whole Star Clan in the current books being different isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think how it is handled and the fact that, at least as far as I can tell, and mind you, I haven't read the last couple of the newest arcs, that the Star Clan being insane is not like a plot point that's supposed to exist. It's just kind of like fans being like, what the heck? From a fan perspective, it seems that as time has gone on, the Erins have forgotten more and more of the original lore and backstory, what have you, put in place in the Warriors canon. In my concept cluster here, the explanation is analogous, in that in the same way the Erins of our canon have forgotten the original myths and legends in the clan canon, so have the living cats of this concept, as well as their Star Clan. As Star Clan grows more detached and loses the connection it has to its original roots, the major and minor clans and all that history, they become seemingly stupider and more on their own. They don't have that wisdom in sort of magic guidance, omens, prophetic, whatever, to help with the living cats, and so that's a whole situation. So the modern day clans would essentially be going through a spiritual crisis, I suppose you could call it, and ideally I'd eventually want to delve into something that makes Star Clan and the Dark Force both a bit more complex and deeper and makes more sense. Think of something like the Choirs of Heaven and Dante's Inferno, the various rings and levels of hell. The deeper you go, the worse, whatever. Of course, with that comes the question of what would angels and demons be in this sort of concept, and that is something that is difficult to find even in like real life with real people for our own actual religious and spiritual reasons. I mean, even if you just ask various types of Christian denominations, they will have different answers for you. So that's a can of worms I don't really want to get into. However, it would be kind of cool if we had some form of it in Warriors. I think it would also be really good to work on how the modern day clans are. For example, it would clear up a lot of issues such as with family bonds and familial relations. Perhaps only nuclear family, so the parents and the offspring and maybe like a step parent and half siblings or something would recognize each other as family, and beyond that they're just clanmates. Because ultimately, and especially if the code for only breeding within the clan itself is followed, then the entire clan clan is just going to be one giant family that's terribly inbred. It isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially in works of fiction like this, because then that would make each clan more distinct from all of the others, the more strictly it adheres to that policy of only breeding within the clan itself. In a later video I'll make, I want to go into some ideas I have for each clan having specific features that just make them culturally different from the other 4 clans. Even though they are all the same clans under the same star clan who follow the same religion, they will each be more uniquely their own. I think another thing to take into consideration is how originally Toms were not necessarily known, or at least obviously stated or noticeable as mates to their queens. Whereas as the books went on, I believe still to this day, it's pretty obvious when there are mates who are established, and kids tend to know who their fathers are, and the fathers play a much bigger role than they used to in the past books. Like the headcanon that back in the day for warriors, the queens wouldn't often name who the father would be, and no Tom would necessarily step up or take a role as a father because they could actually be either mating with other Toms outside of their own clan or just with other Toms who are around. That headcanon also works, I suppose, nicely with the idea that the clans only breed within the clans. They're going to end up so inbred, and inbreeding, when it's done over and over like that in a small sample size, a pool of genetics, it brings up a lot of issues to the surface, genetically speaking, in terms of the animal's health and well-being. That sort of concept of the queens were actually breeding with Toms outside of their clan and just not naming them, that kind of works against the whole concept in this particular AU, just because the clans wouldn't be as unique necessarily if there wasn't a significant amount of inbreeding that gave them all such obvious physical differences from the other clans. Biologically speaking, and this is from what I remember from back when I was studying for biology specifically, which has been years, inbreeding is a problem in that, well, for the long term of a species, you get a very niche species from it that can only survive a very certain specific habitat, and then if like something happens that means they have to change immediately, it's very difficult for them to adapt to the changes, and the species is likely to just disappear because they can't make it because they were so specialized for that one particular existence. So that could actually work out in terms of the different clans having their own sort of like habitat set up and all that, but they still exist as a group of clans under Star Clan because somewhere along the line the knowledge was put into the clan mythos that they all do need each other to keep going in the long run. They help each other out when they most need it. And going forward, you would see Toms take more involvement with mates and their own kits again, as you see in the books as well. So we wouldn't be ditching that. It's just, it would be a sort of workaround, I like to think. And mind you, in my personal AU fanfic headcanon thingy, Tiger Claw is actually not evil, and a lot of rules are switched, but we'll get into all of that much later still. But as the kitty pet code of the clan thing is not put into place until the whole Pine Star situation, it would be Tiger Claw who would be the one who would start a whole ceremony that would turn into tradition. Because of how Pine Star and Leopardfoot were with each other and how they weren't really a couple, and yeah, it was never an actual union or anything, I think it would be really interesting if like Tiger Claw makes a point to have a union ceremony with Golden Flower, because I just love the idea of him being like a little young guy and he's like, ah, White Paw, I really like her, and then they end up being mates when they're adults. So unions would be a thing maybe before that, but I like to think it would be Tiger Claw who would make that a real popular, I guess you could actually say popular type of situation, where a lot of cats would start doing it and Toms would be better fathers after Tiger Claw's influence. I also find that it would be an interesting plot point to have the fathers take a more active role, not only after Tiger Claw or Tiger Star's guidance or lead, but also because there could be times where suddenly there's a call for more clan loyalty and more pure blood, quote unquote. Because of that, you would see Toms becoming more active in taking a mate, paying more attention to her and their kittens they share, and just being a more active mate and father. Something related to that somewhat would be the whole naming method with the warrior ceremony, and even just the prefixes the kits are given when they are named in the nursery. There's so much room for amazing, really cool, fun names that are also creative while still maintaining the realism. What we end up with is a lot of boring or overused names, and I don't have an issue with certain names being, oh, that's a popular name. It's a trend right now for all queens to name their son Ash or whatever. What I think there could be more of is family naming in the clan. Family names would be a big thing where certain lineages, like direct lineage, like parent to child, etc., would have names that would just be passed down. And I think the leaders could also do a much better job. Not looking at the errands or anything, but the leaders could do a much better job on naming their new warriors more creatively and impressively. That said, I do have a headcanon of my own that I've had for years now, that for whatever reason ThunderClan just has a gene for genetically red tails. It began with red tail as far as the readers are concerned. We also have sorrel tail. Sorrel is not only a plant, but it can also be like an orange-brown color. There's also rose tail as well. Rose would be a pinkish color normally, and she's even described as having, I think, a pinkish orange tail originally. Don't know why, but for whatever reason, ThunderClan seems to occasionally pop out a cat who is either calico or one color, and then they just have a red tail. So in that sense, I find names like rose tail, red tail, sorrel tail would all be valid, as they would speak to the genetic red tail that seems to only really be found in ThunderClan. However, I think using certain suffixes, normally that would include tail, but for example, like with fur, too much, especially with cats too closely related or too close in age, that would be just a really strange phenomenon. I don't know, I feel like it would speak to the leader's mental state not being fully there if they have two warriors who are sisters, litter mates at that, and their names are Blue Fur and Snow Fur, for example. Really, really love the Warriors naming system. I believe a lot of us actually do, and there's so much fun to be had with it, but in the books, it's somewhat lackluster, to be completely honest. I want to wrap this up by just offering some ideas that I haven't gotten into too terribly much, although some of them I've done a bit more than others. I think it would be really interesting if warriors had their own sort of zodiac, but also I think birth order, like for a litter, would also play a role if they had like their own zodiac signs, sort of a horoscope type of thing, astrology sort of thing. There really is a lot more to explore and expand with the potential lore, the myths, the legends, etc. in this setup, and I would really like to do that, and I'd really like to not do it alone. That said, I also have a part of the document for this whole workup that involves each clan having a certain holiday that they host for other clans, or each clan will have its own holidays just for itself. There will be holidays that span all of the clans together that happens in each clan's territory. It'll just be like an annual event, and depending on clan politics will depend on whether it even happens or how it will go, etc., etc. So there's a lot going into the clans themselves on making each clan more individual, and I think that's really important, especially with how the whole canon books actually began, with the emphasis on each clan is their own clan, and that ended up not really being the case in our books. But at some point, I want to work up a video on what I have for the differences of the clans. They each also not only have their own like looks and features typically, I also incorporated they each have their own like singing style, because I thought that would just be fun if they have their own little like war cries or battle cries that are actually like songs or tunes, and you know, the queens hum and whatever to their kittens and all that. The elders offer their old songs and whatever. The apprentices have their little chores songs. It would be different in each clan potentially, with some similarities underlying. It would also be interesting for those songs, the lyrics, or even how they are sung to change over time, or even like inflection. It would say a lot about what had happened to the clan as it had progressed over the generations. So holidays, customs, maybe even some more ritualistic type things like with the medicine cats or what have you, which they could maybe play more of a clergy type role than they currently do in the clans. Again, that's another thing that's kind of, it's preached but not practiced in the actual books, I would say. I think it would also be interesting as well if, like, for gatherings and also half moon gatherings, if there is a sort of ceremony, if you will, that is reaching out to StarClan or praising StarClan or honoring StarClan before they have the actual gathering itself, maybe, or like a closing quote unquote I guess you could call it a prayer, for the cats to all take part in before. And obviously, if a clan like disrespects that or something, that would have some sort of impact. Hopefully, there will be videos to come on not just more on this topic, things I've mentioned already more in depth, and things I haven't really mentioned as well. But I also will eventually, this will probably be the later thing to get to, we'll talk about the different ideas and changes I've made and some design tweaks I've put into place for my own fan fiction that I kind of have working with this whole theme going on. Because there are quite a few changes, but I think it could be super fun.